Hello, everybody. Sporp here. I'm doing another viewer request from my patron, Alex. Once again, thank you for supporting the channel. This is going to be a semi-quick, semi-deep dive of my product. So I run, well, I guess it's a service. I run this site. It's called the Digital Leech Finder, and it enables you to process your Instagram information and see who isn't following you back. And I've gotten a couple paid customers so far. Yay me. And today, because I'm reworking this site to move from single-time purchases to a subscription service, I'm going to show you the present state of the site, as is before we move on. So, quick little synopsis. I'm sure all of you have seen this before. This is the idea of the model view controller sort of thing. I know it's not exactly the triangle, but whatever. This is more or less the three parts of my web app, just so you can understand what's going on under the hood. So the front end, I use React on the front end to generate a site that updates dynamically as you move around it, make data requests from it, data repopulates the site, re-renders the site. That's all happening here. I create the app, I build it, and then I upload the code onto the website path for the digitalleechfinder.com so that people can interact with the site. While you're interacting with the site, you make calls, and these calls go to my API, which is a Node.js backend API hosted on Render. You make calls via the front end. Data requests get sent to the backend. The backend determines whether these requests are legitimate or not based on your login token and based on the actions that you want to do. And then any persistent data, so data that exists between login sessions, gets sent to and taken from the database here, also hosted on Render. React, Node.js, Postgres, that's my site. And it's taken me a couple months to get to this place. With code, one of the hardest parts is knowing what you need to do. When you can explain what you need to do in plain English, translating the plain English into code isn't quite so bad. But until you can define your problem statement of what you're trying to solve, you typically, I especially, struggle with coding. So figure out what you need, and then from there, figure out how to code it. So this is my service that I've created for a market segment, people who are interested in seeing who isn't following them back on Instagram. And in order to do so, this is all I had to do. So this site is made via the command line option of create React app. You can notice that I think it still has the same background color from that app itself. An app generally looks like this. We have an index page, index.js. There's usually an index. Where are you? Public. There we go. Index.html. So this is the this is the page that when you load into digitalleechfinder.com, this is what's actually happening. This is the thing that you look at. And then React has something called a virtual DOM, which right here, script ID, react.env, source, ID, div, root. This is the sort of injection site for your React app. And this root element here, this is what links the HTML page to the virtual DOM. Now, don't quote me on that. I'm a back-end guy who's spent maybe 2-ish, 3-ish years on React, but very much back-end centric due to the whole computer engineering degree thing, and then databases, and I worked a ton in Node.js microservices while my time in the workforce. So if we notice this little bit here, root, I go over to the source, index.js, root.render. There's that magic word again. Get element by ID, our document root, and we're rendering at root our app, which takes us all the way back to app.js, which is more or less the beating heart of your React application. I have a cookie, your DILF cookie, because you are a DILF user if you use the Digital Leech Finder. Shout out to all my dilfs out there. We have our token, which is the thing that is the conditional that swaps between loading the login and the login page, which is this right here, along with our various other non-loginable pages. We have a link to the tutorial for the site. We have our FAQ, which is the same. Gross. In Linux, I have a night mode plugin enabled, so sometimes I get these little gross in-betweens. But so this is my FAQ page. It's the same one that's shown in the login version. Once you get past that login section of the site, as you can see here, I got my FAQ component here twice, one pre-login and one post-login. Return to the login page. I have a contact page where you can reach out to me for my business. And then we have the login page itself. And I guess we'll dive into that next. But first we'll just go into the control flow here. So if I don't have my login token, which is updated via this React hook, use state. If you're going to do React, I recommend using hooks. I just find them so much easier than class components. It's just so much less writing to do the same exact things. State is the current quote-unquote state of your user and all the stuff attached to your user at that current moment in the app. State is updated via these getter setters. So if I say I want a selected product to go through my checkout flow, I would set that product via this setter, set selected product, and then I can access what product I have selected via this getter, selected product. And that getter setter is broken out via this destructuring array. I think it's destructuring. But anywho, starts out as a null object or empty object, and then it can be populated via the getter and retrieved via this, populated via the setter, retrieved via the getter. Next, I use browser router to navigate my app. So if I have my login token and I'm not in one of the I'm not in one of the site paths, and I'll explain these next. If I'm not in one of the site paths that is applicable for a non-logged in user, then I send them back to the root index, which is my login component. Browser router enables you to use the URL. I don't know if it's quite using the URL, but it's in tandem with the URL to set what part of the app that you're looking at. Now, when I navigate between these URLs, I'm not reloading the page. I'm dynamically rendering a new component onto the page as the user navigates through my site. So if I come back to here, I'm currently at the root path, so that / I'm at the login component. This is my login component. If I click register, and if I go over to the login component real quick, handle navigate to register. I did clean these up at a later portion because these are kind of gross. But as you can see right here, I have a navigate function, which I'm pulling from React Router DOM, which is the routing library I'm using to navigate through my site. I use that navigate function call to move to a different URL, which loads a different component. So I'm on the login page. I hit register, which will, if I go down to the button down here, button contain, handle navigate to register right here. This is a button. When it is clicked, I call this function here, handle navigate to register, and that navigates me to my register component. Register here. And if I go back to the app, I'm no longer at the root, I'm at /register. So what's at /register? The register component. Click on that. Bada bing, bada boom. Here is my registered component. Now, I think this one's actually a little bit easier to look at than the login page. So we'll start here when we explain rendering when it comes to React. So every component when you invoke it, like right here, right here, right here, these are all different components that are selectively, I think it's invoked, I don't know, I'm still a little messy with the React jargon, but it works. So these components are rendered, and when they are rendered, they have a bunch of logic up top of JavaScript of the various actions you want the component to perform when you mess around with it. And then they have the returned HTML, which is actually what you render on the site. So register here, register here. You'll receive an email. Click the link to activate your account. You'll receive an email. Click the link to activate your account. Then we have an on-form submit. So these three inputs and their labels are all tied to this submit button. And I have a handle submit when that button is clicked. But we have our email field with a label, and we have the email itself, which is updating a hook at the top. Once again, going back to our hooks. Every hook has a getter and a setter. Every time a character is added to this input, I'm calling this function on change here, which sets the email state. So it's setting. God, programming just goes and goes and goes and goes. It's an infinite rabbit hole. So when I call this setter, I can then activate what this thing has set via this getter. Set email on change, the target value. Whenever this field changes, so this field just changed 4 times right there. Once when I typed A, and again when I typed S, again when I typed D, and then F. Every single time the value within this input field changes, this on change triggers and updates my hook via the setter call here. I think it's called a setter. I'm used to more Java-y sort of lingo from back in college. So we have our setter, and we have our getter. I'm just going to keep calling them that. So every single time this field changes, if I hit A, it triggered the on change. It called set email. So it called set email with A. And then this return value is now changed. If you were to console log this, if you were to add email in here somewhere, actually I can do this right now, which is pretty cool. React uses JSX, which enables you to interlink, dynamically distinct interlinked. Does anyone else feel like Ryan Gosling is literally them? So I'm going to select that getter. Look at that, email A. It already updated it for me. Every single time this field changes, I'm updating the hook. And whenever a hook is updated, if its data is being used within your rendered part of the application, it will re-render your variable for you. So A, SDF, ASDF, ASDF. That's a very quick and dirty example of how a hook functions. I'll just get rid of that. I'm going scorched earth on this thing, but that's all right. Cool. So that's our register here page. We're then going to, let's say I make an email. I decide to register an account with this site, put in an email, put in 2 passwords, and I then this is kind of bad, but that's why I like showing off what I have, because that is bad. No, actually, no, I have a check for it. Never mind. Haha. Not as bad as I thought it was. So it should update automatically if these passwords don't match. But if I just have one and then I have one password and then I have the inverse, it's going to prevent it. Okay, cool. So I did take care of that edge case. It's just kind of shitty, but that's okay. It's important to power through the things that make your MVP, minimum viable product. Updating this password comparator isn't worth my time right now because my product, due to me refactoring it, is currently off market. You want your product in the market in front of as many eyes as consistently and quickly as possible so you can start making money, because money's the lifeblood of a business. A business is an organic being that requires money to survive, and requires not too much of it to either bleed out or there's this other phrase from Alex Hormozy. I forget the guy he quoted, but businesses don't die of starvation, they die of indigestion. You ideally want the chakras of your business to be open and flowing. And in order to do so, the mouth's got to be open. And right now my mouth's shut because I'm reworking the app because it's a little too confusing for the average user. And I'm reworking it to be mobile ready. And I'm taking a shortcut when it comes to mobile ready. Instead of making apps, I'm just making a mobile site that works for all the available mobile phones that I want to cover. And then I just tweak it a little bit to make it a bit more big boy and big screeny when it comes to using it as a desktop site. So if I solve the mobile site problem, which is the vast majority of the people who saw my ads and tried to use it but couldn't because it was only desktop ready, if I cover that market segment first, then I can worry about other market segments down the line. Anywho, so we have our component, which serves the function of collecting the user's email and requested password, and then sends that password to my backend. Once it gets there, it will hit the backend itself, and that will update the database and mail the user using NodeMailer a link to click to activate their account to make sure they're not botting. Because it's just one of the quicker ways to get around the issue of, is this person real or am I wasting my bandwidth on them? So in order to do that, I use a promise. So await get, which is, I just made the Axios config. So I use Axios to make my REST calls. I made my own helper library for this so that I don't have to consistently add the token into it in line. When I call this get call, it's kind of a, what's the term? It's not it's overloaded function. That's not correct, but it's essentially the same. It does the same shtick. It just takes the ending URL that calls this concatenates this URL here with my backend's URL. So I hit a website. All APIs are just websites that you call with data and return data to you. I call that website, that hits my backend. The backend does that little bit of business logic, puts their data in the database, and then lets them know an email is on the way. So and I think this will reject if I use a bunk email address, but I have these alerts that pop up whether or not your action was legitimate. So let's go back to login. I will pump in my dummy user here. I will go back to my login thing, which once again is a form that when it submits with the user's updated email and password, that once again, they're just hooks that take your inputted values and adds them to these state variables. I guess they're variables. React gets a little tricksy sometimes. Then you hit submit. On submit, we get this, when I submit, do this action, which once again hits another Axios call. I log in my user, which I think that's up here. Yep, login user. Same thing, Axios call with query params for the email and the password. That returns a token. So if I look down here on my handle submit, first thing is I log in my user, which is that function up there. I get a token. If I don't get any token back, I complain to the user and let them know they did something wrong. And I set my token twice for some reason. I forget why. This is one of those spaghetti code little tech debt things that, once again, doesn't impact the functionality of my app. So I'm moving forward as quickly as possible to make my application a legitimate market product as fast as possible. Grab my token, and that sets my token because I passed. This is a prop, so I passed the hook into the login. When that login logic clears and works and returns my token, I've passed this function, this setter for my hook up here, set token. So I set this token here for this state variable, and now I have this token available, and this is my conditional. So a conditional, it is true or false, and depending if it's true or false, it will either perform this logic. So this exclamation mark here, it's the something operator. I keep thinking interrobang, but that is not right, or ternary, but it inverts the truth of this variable here, this getter. So this is a falsy value. JavaScript has a few falsy values: empty string, 0, null, undefined. If this is equal to any of those, so if this says false, then it's true. Get it? Because the inverse of a false is a true. So then it would render this. But if I do have my login token, then I jump all this logic, because if this is true and this inverts truth, then it's a false. I jump down to my full app, which, if I log in, brings me into my app. And like I said, cheeky way to cheat the system, I've made a mobile app. So this is about the width of a mobile screen. I made a mobile app. Still got a few little tweaks to tweak around with this. But I can make a mobile app work on desktop a lot easier than I can make a desktop app work for mobile. So we log in, and our route, so we have, once again, our browser router, which is that overarching component which contains all of the routes that your app uses. I have a header which contains the title. It contains this token button, which shows you the number of tokens your account has. Once again, moving to a subscription model, so this will not be used forever. And I have my navigation pane here, and it's a pain. So this dropdown is a React select component, which has, if I go to my header, the header has a couple values. So upload is an empty string, dashboard is lowercase dashboard, same thing goes for purchase tokens, FAQ, contact, and log out. Whenever I click one of these, it navigates me to a different page. And there's just some placeholder user information. Got a graph here, got a download of CSV, all that jazz. And I guess we can go into the dashboard now, since I think that's sort of the core of this whole piece. So I have all my various components here, not organized because I'm a bad boy. Just doing, well, like I said, getting the MVP out right now, and the lowest hanging fruit is switching to a subscriber. But I felt like this was a good stopgap to show off my code base, since it's just sort of in flux right now. This is the last I would consider like done version, maybe like v0.1 of the site. So I go to dashboard, which is where we are currently at. I'm going to bring that over and show you how, once again, in our routes, I have my dashboard route. If I look up in the URL, I'm on the dashboard page, which takes us into our dashboard component, which has a few different hooks up here. The report list, which is this portion right here. Every single time you upload a report, I save the timestamp of when that report was made, so you can go back in history, and I uploaded a lot of the same data, so it's not going to change. But this is my report list up here. And these report lists, each of these, it is a, let's see, if I go over to report list, I believe it is, yes, element, report meta array. report list. Cool. So every report is a mixture between a value and a label. And this is done to link into this element up here, which is my select from the library React select. These are a series of labels, just as these are a series of labels in the header. If I go back to the header, I have my page select options, which shows a label, which is the string that's shown in the drop-down menu. And then the value, which for the header is your path. So if I look at handle select navigate selected page, if I go down to the select, so this is my select element up here. This is my select element down in the header. On change, I do handle select navigate, which shows, if I go up here, I have my selected page. When I do handle select navigate for select, it sends the label value pair of what was selected in the drop-down menu. So I have my selected page dot value. Once again, if I look up at the values here, they are my navigation paths, which is this dashboard up here. Selected page, that's my new path. If it's a logout, do the logout logic where I navigate them back to the root. I erase the cookie, and I set a timeout to make sure that these actions happen, and then I reload the page. If I navigate, then I use that use navigate call that we were using earlier, which for React Router DOM is once again how I'm navigating my application. And then I set the selected page. So if I hit upload, I'm setting the page to an empty string, because upload has an empty string. It's going to replace that path. So navigate will be / plus an empty string, which will bring me to root. So if I click upload, I go to the root of my app. And since I have the login token, I go to the upload component, page component, whatever. This is technically a component, but it can get confusing that this whole page itself is under the upload component. Then I go to dashboard, and if I go to header, once again, I select dashboard instead. It will send the key value pair with the label dashboard and the value dashboard with the lowercase. Path becomes dashboard with the lowercase. Skip the logout function because that's not where I'm going. Then I will navigate to / dashboard. Dashboard, dashboard. Cool. On the dashboard, I use this next incredibly effective, hook, which is the use effect hook, which updates data on your page in your state, does whatever actions you want it to do, depending on how you've entered or how you are using or how you're leaving the component. Use effect can trigger 3 different ways, either on page load, which if you pass an empty array, it will trigger just when you initially load the page. If you put a state variable in here, whenever that state variable is updated, it can trigger that use effect function again. And also there are destructuring functions where you can do garbage collection or clear out some gobbledygook when you are deconstructing, destructuring, exploding, blowing to kingdom come with the power of 1,000 suns, getting rid of your component. Those are sort of the 3 times where you would want to use a use effect. Initially, this is a very great little tidbit for debugging. If you're doing a lot of things in your use effect, you can, or if you're using an async function within your use effect, you can call that function within a use effect. Because I don't believe this works if this is not present. Yeah, it doesn't like me awaiting stuff. So I have my fetch data function call, which when this component loads, the dashboard component loads, you'll notice that it's first empty. That's because it's running this fetch data function which is a promise. So in JavaScript, if you are waiting for some data to come back to you, this is one of the ways that you can do it. You either can use this .await syntax, which I really love because I think the .then, which is the other way to do it, I think that just looks gross. I don't know why. I abhor it. So I really like getting a variable and then doing stuff with it. So in order to, probably should be wrapped in a try catch, but once again, whatever, we're flying by the seats of our pants here. I call that Axios call, same thing, get, so I can use my token in order to authenticate that I am the correct user requesting this data. I get all reports in a list from the backend, which I then use to populate this select, so I can select other reports from back in time. And I do that by getting the data itself. And then I push all this data into an array so that the React select can use it with, once again, same thing as the header. It's got a value and a label pair to display the text on the select and then what value is being used for a function call whenever you click on one of these selections. I then also have my graph data array reversed for each element, which I use for this graph modal. So this is a React icon that is the face of a button, and when you click that button, it launches a modal, which shows you your leeches and suckers over time. And that is generated via this. I do a kind of dumb underscore case to camel case thing here. That's a nasty habit from a job 2 jobs ago where everything in the database was underscore case. Everything on the front end was camel case, period. So most of my job for 3 years was converting camel case variables to underscore case and vice versa. I got very good at one keyboard shortcut in VS Code to do this. All right, so I map the data, getting all my stuff from the back end. I then populate these 2 arrays, which are then pushed into hooks. And then I take the latest report and I get all the data from that, which are my followers, following, leeches, and suckers. This is a little bunk. But I process the report data, which allows me to so I'm essentially getting a master list of all the usernames attached to the report. So it goes username, and then there's 2 booleans of whether they are following you or you are following them. And this little processing logic pushes the usernames to the proper arrays for populating these 4 text boxes. So these are each driven by a hook, which is the useState hook. First, I take the data from the report. I create 4 arrays for each of the types of users attached to the report, and then I update the hook itself. And when I update the hook, these, which should be broken out into components, but once again, tech debt, speed, all that stuff. Ooh, and these have titles. Very quick and dirty little way to attach meaning to HTML elements is you can add this little bit here called a title. And if I hover over this, it displays the text. So from leeches, accounts that you follow that aren't following you, accounts you follow that aren't following you. I have, these don't really need to be hooks, but okay. So these, anything in between brackets in a JSX element doesn't have to be a hook. These aren't being updated, but in order to dynamically use these same variables in all four of my hooks, in all four of my components, these guys here, I wrap these in brackets because if this is just an HTML, React thinks it knows what's going on here. It says, hey, this needs to be declared as a JavaScript variable being written into the virtual DOM, which is the purpose of these curly braces right here. Then I have my actual state variables here. I have my leeches, I got my following list, the follower list, and suckers at the top. And you'll notice they are state hooks up here, which are all initialized as empty arrays. When the data flows, the data must flow. When the data flows into the state variable, the virtual DOM notices that there's a change in this text area's value, and it will re-render these four text boxes with the applicable data. So if I go back to upload, and then I go back to dashboard, when I load, I'm going to click real quick. Oh, wow, that really loaded fast. I can't even beat it. So it loads all of my reports for my user first, and then it loads all the data pertaining to the latest report, populates those hooks up here, and then because these are hooks that have been updated, React re-renders my four text areas to join the arrays of usernames for my report via this join command, which creates a massive text block separated by new line characters. And it does that 4 times, one for all of my pertinent followers and following. So that is a very, very simplistic overview of my current state of my actual service that is live. Let me know if you have any questions. Once again, Alex, thank you very much for supporting the channel. If you'd like to support the channel, I have a board game. It is available again. Site was down for a little bit, but we are back in business at lyoc.shop. We're having a Cyber Monday sale right now for a couple days, $5 off your purchase. I'd recommend getting this board game. I spent on and off about 5 or 6 years of my life on it. I love it. It's pretty freaking good. The quality's surprisingly well. Like, it's well made for a Kickstarter project. I think when it's in its final state, it's going to be worth probably $50. So you're getting it as a steal for just $35. Go support me on Patreon or coffee. Buy me a cup of coffee if you'd like. Subscribe to the channel if this was helpful to you. If it wasn't helpful, let me know exactly why. I'm sure I'm going to get some graybeards in the comment that are more knowledgeable than me about React that are going to cringe at my various definitions and hand waves and all that jazz. All right. Thank you so much for watching. You have a good one.